Thank you all for coming. The six of us just returned from a very full day in South Texas, and we want to brief you on information we gathered and what we learned. Most importantly, we learned that there are consequences to an unsecured border. I want to tell you about our day. We began our day in Carrizo Springs with a briefing by the Chief Patrol Agent of the United States Border Patrol, then Chief McGraw, who you all know, with the Texas Department of Public Safety, along with the Regional Director of the Department of Public Safety, briefed us. Then we toured the Carrizo Springs Youth Processing Center, formerly known as the Influx Shelter at Carrizo Springs. You'll hear more about that. Following that, DPS took us on a helicopter tour of the Rio Grande. And we're going to fill you in on information that we gathered, some of the things that we learned, and many details that we picked up on. We're going to start by a briefing by Senator Huffman.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Nelson. Thank you all for being here. And we're excited to tell you about our day, but it was a sad day too. When we made the decision, and this came about a week ago, we were sitting around talking as mothers. We were so concerned about what we were hearing about what was the crisis that was beginning to develop at the border. And we wanted to go see it for ourselves. So we made plans to do so. We had hoped to visit the facility at Donna, where a lot of the unaccompanied minors first are brought. But we were denied entry to that facility. Director McCraw made a direct appeal for us to be allowed entry, and 6 Texas senators were denied entry into a facility in Donna, Texas, all right? So think about that. We were concerned about what is going on. We wanted to see the children. We wanted to see the conditions of the children, but we were denied entry. We did have, as Senator Nelson mentioned, a great briefing with the Chief Patrol Agent for the Rio Grande sector, the Del Rio sector of Border Patrol, and he was fabulous. And he shared with us very openly a lot of alarming statistics about what is going on there and how quickly this problem, this crisis, is escalating. Please pay attention to this, members of the press. Please pay attention to this and look at what is going on. We know that these children who are coming across the border, imagine the arduous journey that they're going through. And then they come here. We don't know exactly what's going on at these facilities. We know once they get them settled, we toured another facility where it appeared that they were very well cared for and taken care of. That was in Carrizo Springs. But then they move on to different parts of the country. We are gravely concerned about how these children could be trafficked as they make their way up, how they may be sexually abused, and what fate lies for them at the end of their journey. These are all the concerns we have. The Chief Border Agent also told us of a story of a crossing that had happened just yesterday, a Guatemalan mother with her 9-year-old and her 3-year-old, and their raft capsized. And unfortunately, the 9-year-old drowned and did not make it. Think of that mother who'd come all the way from Guatemala, walking in all likelihood the whole way, and then to lose her son as she tried to cross the river. These are real people with real stories. This is a real problem. And we were impressed with the work that DPS is doing. They're doing Operation Lone Star, which is saturating the border in a certain segment with DPS troopers assisting Border Patrol. So we're very thankful for this investment that we've made into the border the last few sessions, because it is proving critical as DPS tries to assist the federal agencies who are struggling down there at the border. I'll turn it over to the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Huffman. Thank you, Chairman Nelson, and all my fellow senators who went to the border today. It was out of concern for the children that we as moms made that connection and wanted to just see for ourselves what was going on. We can all agree that the Border Patrol and DPS work around the clock on that border to keep Texas safe and Texans safe. Statistics do support that the situation at our border has gone from a calm to a catastrophe in a matter of months. And I do believe that's because of decisions made in D.C. And that the mishandling of the border is needlessly causing families to be separated, putting children's lives at risk. So there are consequences to the policies and what's going on at the border. There's a record number, they're on track to see a record number of unaccompanied children coming to the United States. Illegal aliens are coming from 58 different countries around the world, from Angola to Yemen. The children that come here, they don't come with immunization records, so we don't know where their immunization status is. This creates a concern for a resurgence of childhood illnesses that in America we have seen significantly reduced, as well as a resurgence of TB. So again, porous borders, as Senator Huffman was saying, is not without consequences. We've got to call it what it is, and that's a crisis. And it's not described any better with any other name. And it's a crisis that must be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Lois Kilcourse, Texas State Senator and Chair of Health and Human Services in the Texas Senate. So I was really pleased to go with these fine senators and to meet with the Border Patrol and to meet with our DPS officers. It was amazing to see the collaboration that we have between a state agency and a federal agency. They are working hand in hand. I'm going to give you some statistics, I guess, from the angle of a mother, but also as the Chair of Health and Human Services. So in fiscal year 20, we had just in the Del Rio sector, okay, so the Del Rio sector, we were in Carrizo Springs, it's Dimmitt County, it goes up to Maverick County. It really just has 3 major border counties. In that sector, which is the #2 highest crossings right now in the United States, it went from 16,240 apprehensions in fiscal year 20. And the Fed's fiscal year runs from October 1 to September 30th, to just this year, this is year to date this year in 21, starting in October, to 60,554. That's a 273% increase. You look at family units, they're up 101%. But what's most alarming to me and these other senators is that unaccompanied minors, unaccompanied children are up 179%. So we went and we visited it's a U.S. Health and Human Services ORR operations influx shelter at Carrizo Springs. It's actually run by nonprofit, the BCFS. Y'all know that as the Baptist Children Family Services unit, and they've operated it. They really fired up in February. They have 700 13 to 17-year-old boys, young men, 700. Of those, about 10%, roughly 10% are testing positive for COVID. Now, basically, if you look at what's happening, only the Del Rio area is testing for COVID at this point. And so it's running at about 10%. They are not testing in that shelter, as we understand it, in Donna, in some of what we call the detention centers. And so this is of grave concern for all of us and for the children, the unaccompanied children, minors that are coming across. And let me say that while Del Rio has these huge increases, the #1 border crossing right now is the Rio Grande sector. So Texas now has the #1 and the #2 crossings. And so just to put it in statistics, if you look at the ORR, which is the Office of Resettlement and Resolution, right now they're capturing about 700 unaccompanied children a day. They claim they catch about less than half. That's about 35,000 per month. And if you look at those numbers, the director of BCFS shelter in Carrizo Springs says basically in 20 days, the entire ORR, all of their resettlement camps are full. In the United States, there's just roughly 13,000 beds. And so that's why you're seeing what's happening in Midland pop up. That's why you're seeing what's just happened in Dallas, in the convention center. And so, you know, as Chair of Health and Human Services, very worried about these children's safety, very worried for their health. Like Senator Huffman said, the camp with 700 children in it. It's an old man camp for oil wells. They're being well taken care of. America is a wonderful place in that regard. Each child costs about $1,000 a day, or a little more. So it's about just for that one camp, about $700,000 per day to care for them. On average, they stay 10 days. And then they're trying to resettle them throughout the United States. But we do have a humanitarian crisis on the border here in Texas. You can just see the percentages of how they have spiked in year-to-date 2021. So with that, I'll let my other colleagues talk. Thank you all for coming out today. It's something that we all need to understand, that it's happening in our state. #1 and #2 crossing in the United States in the southern border is right here in Texas. And again, I'm going to say the increase in unaccompanied minors is alarming, startling, that these children are traversing these other countries. You know, one of the things we heard today, Haiti. There are a lot of people coming from Haiti. It's matching some of the other more traditional South American countries that you would think. So with that, I'll turn it over to my colleagues.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I'm Dr. Dawn Buckingham, State Senator for District 24, and I have to say, as someone who ran initially on securing the border and getting rid of the unfunded the lures that bring people here and unfunded mandates, as a mom, it is really a joy and a pleasure to stand with such a distinguished group of ladies and moms who truly care about the environments that our kids are growing up in and the world that they're going to inherit. The problem, as I see it, is that our communities, especially in South Texas, are overwhelmed by these lures that are the Biden policies. I spoke to people from both sides of the aisle today who are very fatigued at having immigrants' rights and issues placed before their own. They are overwhelmed in medical capacity. They are overwhelmed in a judicial sense. You have families from all over the world coming here because of our great American exceptionalism, drawn here by the promises of the Biden administration and the policies, and what they experience on the way is terrible. And you have the predators along that way who predate on them and benefit from them. We heard statistics today that the cartels in Mexico are literally making millions of dollars off of just smuggling and trafficking a lot of these individuals. And that is not something we can stand for. We as a state legislature have dedicated all of our resources as much as we can to help our communities along the border. And it's time for the Biden administration to stand up. It's a watershed moment for our president and his administration. Are you going to stand with these communities who need you, or are you going to continue to cause problems? Thank you.
Well, thank you for being here. I'm State Senator Angela Paxton, Senate District 8, up in Collin and Dallas counties. And like my colleagues here, I'm a mom of 4. I'm a new grandmother. Yay. That's the best. And as I looked at what was happening today up close, I couldn't help but consider what I will just call the human cost. And we've talked a little bit about the dollar figure that has to be expended in order to care for these children. And I would say that that is something that we do willingly because it has to be done. And these are federal policies that draw on our state. But we do it because we value human life in the state of Texas. But there are others who do not value human life the way we do. And some of the most disturbing things I heard today were dollars that are associated with people, but not like I just described, not to care for them, but the fee exacted to smuggle them. Senator Buckingham alluded to this a little bit. And this is just in the Del Rio sector. This is not the entire border. This is only in the Del Rio sector. In fiscal year 2020, there were 412 smuggling cases. In fiscal year 21, year to date, which, by the way, we're only halfway through, there have been 1,219, roughly 3 times. And we're only halfway through 21. The cartels are the only quote-unquote winners in this scenario. The average smuggling fee the cartels charge for a Mexican national individual is $4,080. That's the price on that person's head. A single adult that's not a Mexican national, $5,733. An unaccompanied child that is not a Mexican national, $7,309. A non-Mexican national family unit, this is kind of the bulk discount, I guess, $5,893. Every week, with these average fees, based on the numbers that we're seeing come across the border, the cartels, just from smuggling human beings, are profiting over $11 million. $11 million. That's just with people. And they make more, law enforcement told us today, from smuggling drugs. So you can only imagine. It cannot be stated more clearly that there are consequences to what's happening on the border with the policy. And we asked law enforcement, Border Patrol and DPS, what's the difference between fiscal year 2020 and fiscal year 21? What's the one big difference? Why have these numbers spiked? And they said, it's one policy. It's the Stay in Mexico policy, which has now been removed. And while some may see this as a move of compassion, I would say it is exactly the opposite, because what it has done, it has emboldened and empowered the cartels to extort money from these people with the promise of something better in exchange for their life savings. And they will pay. There is no not coming through on these payments. These are not nice travel accommodations. We know that these children, these women, are being abused and exploited along the way. And it is anything but humanitarian. As the numbers of people entering and being detained increase, the number of our Border Patrol agents are moved from being able to do their job of patrolling the border to processing people, which leaves more gaps so that the cartels can exploit more people and get them across the border. It's a pathetic downward spiral that is tragic, and it denies the human dignity that we believe in. I think there is only one word for a policy that incentivizes human trafficking: abuse. Lack of care for people's health, lack of care and concern for American citizens. And I think that word is heartless. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for caring. And I hope you'll listen to these numbers. There are numbers that value people, and there are numbers that exploit them. And we stand against the numbers that exploit human beings. Thank you.
There are consequences to unsecured borders. We went down there, this idea started, we wanted to go and see the Donna facility, and we were denied that opportunity. We wanted to see the children. We care. And yet, we learned so much. And, good news is we learned an even greater appreciation for our Department of Public Safety right here in Texas. I have to tell you, we are so grateful for the work they're doing and for the partnership that they have with the U.S. Border Patrol. It's just amazing what they're doing. We learned the statistics, some of which you heard, some that you didn't. The one statistic nobody threw out, and I'm trying to remember it, was the 35,000. If things continue on the trajectory for that one sector, that trajectory, 35,000, is that right? Per month. We can't sustain that. And you have the number? You don't have the number. She'll look it up. It's unsustainable. And 5 of us are on Finance Committee. So you ask yourself, okay, how does this impact Texas? I'll tell you how it impacts us. We, right now, every session for the last, I can't tell you how many sessions, we have made a huge commitment to border security from our state budget. And quite honestly, that's money that I would love to spend on education or a lot of other things, but we are absolutely committed to border security. And I believe that there's $800 million right now proposed in the budget that I have filed. But, and we spent more than, what, Senator Huffman, 1.3 in last session's budget, billion. But that's not enough to plug the holes. My friends, it is a crisis, and with 35,000 potential coming per month, you cannot sustain that. And look long term, the health ramifications of these children, if they are in Texas, we're going, the health burden, the education burden, the economic burden, there are those factors, but then the human factors of the misery of human trafficking, I think that's what tugged at our hearts the most. It's what is going to happen to these children. These traffickers don't care what happens to these children. And they're trafficking drugs that they're going to sell to our children, and they're trafficking children that they are going to sell. That is modern day slavery. And wake up. We've got to do something about this. I don't know what we can do as Texas senators. We're going to do whatever we can do. But we can't do it alone. We have to draw attention to this. And I'm telling you, unsecured borders have consequences. So I'll throw it out. I'm sure there are questions. We'll try to answer them. We have some absolutely shocking statistics that we could share with you, but we hurried back on the plane, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you all...
I have a question. I'm Hayden Sparks from the Texan News.
Yes.
Y'all mentioned that you were denied access to the Donna facility, and today the White House still declined to characterize this as a crisis. Would y'all say that you feel the Biden administration is taking the concerns of the state of Texas seriously, and what do you think it's going to take for the White House to give regard to some of the statistics as y'all have discussed?
I would absolutely call this a crisis. I disagree on that point. And I seem to remember people talking about transparency not too long ago, and I think one aspect of transparency would be letting us all go see what's going on down there. And what it takes, I think, is having public awareness of the fact that something's, all this is going on, and we've got to do something. This is unsustainable, by the way. Just from a pure monetary standpoint, it's unsustainable, let alone the human. I think that's in just, talking on the plane coming home, what concerned us the most was the human aspect of this. These are young people that are being trafficked, and these are drugs they're selling to our children, and we cannot let this happen. And if that isn't considered a crisis, I don't know what is. Anybody else?
Yeah, I wanted to
Senator,
add
go.
that sex offenders that are apprehended, keep in mind that Border Patrol told us that they are able to apprehend probably a little less than half of the people coming across the border. So when we talk about apprehensions, when I gave you the 60,554 in fiscal year 21, as one of the senators said, that's about 6 months of 21.
In one sector.
In one sector, only in the Del Rio sector, that is a little less than half that is coming across the border. Of those apprehended, sex offenders are up 1,967%. I'm going to say that again. Sex offender apprehensions are up 1,967%. Of those apprehended only in the Del Rio sector, which is the #2 most prolific crossing in the United States.
Let me explain when we talk about a sex offender, we're talking about an individual who has been convicted of a sexual offense, has been deported, and now is re-entering across the border. So these aren't just people who have been accused or people that we think are sex offenders. These are convicted sex offenders.
And if that doesn't scare you, I don't know what.
Other questions?
Yeah, question here. Thank you. So some of you are placing this at the feet of the current administration in Washington, but not all of these issues are brand new as of January 20th. How can you, I guess, what is different now with this administration that feels different compared to the last 2 decades worth of?
We asked that question. We asked that question. Senator Paxton, you want to reiterate that? Because we asked that very question.
We asked law enforcement, Border Patrol, DPS, what is the difference between the 2020 numbers and the 2021 numbers? And they said one thing, and they said it is the stay in Mexico policy. In 21, we are dealing with a post-stay in Mexico policy where people who came to the border seeking asylum, whatever else, they didn't come over to the United States to wait. They waited on the Mexican side. That is what law enforcement, that's not what we're saying, that's what law enforcement told us. So to answer the question very clearly, there is one policy that accounts for most of this, and it is that policy.
May I add to, they had a chart. They had a graph. We saw more graphs than charts today that you can imagine. And they had a chart that showed dramatically when that policy was no longer in place, and boom. I mean, it was, what somebody called it.
Yes, I said it looks like a seismic graph.
Yes.
And I said, that is an earthquake.
Yeah,
That's what you see.
it was dramatic. Other,
And the policy is Migrant Protection Protocol, like something like
They know-
MPP.
they know what it
So that's what that policy is.
I would like to add one other thing. The chief of the Del Rio sector, he did say that the crossing started after the election, and I think there was a signal there. I'm not being political. I'm just saying these were the facts, that they could trace it to that. And he says that he often goes on Facebook and social media, and he's retweeted and different things that the message has to go back to these countries. I mean, they're sending their children. We saw 13-year-old to 17-year-old. These are boys that have traversed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles, and I can't even imagine what they've seen. Of course, there are centers for young females just like that.
6-year-olds up alone.
Yeah, they've picked up 6-year-olds alone, and so the message back to those countries is very important, that we don't have open borders, therefore they won't send their children. So it really is a messaging and a policy issue that we have to work on, and we're very concerned for Texas and just what you can and can't handle. That statistic of in 20 days all ORR beds are filled. I mean, they are filled, and now you see what they're having to do at the Kay Bailey Hutchison Convention Center. And in Midland, where I understand Kel Seliger, I saw a tweet by him, Senator Seliger wanted to go visit the detention center in Midland, and he was disallowed in his own district.
Senator, could I just also say the messaging that Senator Colcourse is talking about, understand the messaging isn't just going to, hey, people who want a better life, you should come. The messaging is to the cartels.
Yeah.
So do you support a restoration of the Remain in Mexico policy? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think that would be an individual question for each senator.
Would each of you answer?
I absolutely would, but that's just me.
I would. It gives them protection until their asylum case is up, and we've got to do something to protect this surge of unaccompanied children.
I think, is that it? Okay, there you go, there you go. I appreciate all of you, we appreciate everyone being here. I think what you can do to help us is to get the message out. We care deeply about these children. We are most grateful to the Texas Department of Public Safety and to the U.S. Border Patrol, but this can't continue. We had a very, very good day. Thank you all. Thank you, ladies.